So in this episode, I promised you in my last video that I would be showing you how to dig up your dahlia tubers, separate them, and put them away for storage. And that's exactly what we're gonna do here today, right after this. Before you go digging up your dahlias, there's some things that we want to go over real quick. First of all, if you are in a zone, I would say 8A or below, most likely, depending on the cultivar of dahlia you got, you don't necessarily need to worry about digging them up unless you're trying to separate them to maximize the possibilities of how many beautiful flowers you can have throughout your garden. We'll come back to that later though. Now, if you are above 8A, I'd say 7B and above, right? The lower the number, the colder it gets, then you're going to want to pull your dahlia tubers up. And this is why. When we experience a heavy freeze in these areas, it will ultimately kill our tubers. So we don't want that to happen. These things can be very expensive. You could pay upwards of $10 per tuber, depending on the farm you get them from and the quality and the cultivar of that tuber. We don't want to do that. So what we'll do in our zones is dig them up. You can wait a couple weeks after your first frost, but the sooner the better. You can actually pull them up before your first frost, which is what a lot of gardeners do. Once you have determined that you're going to pull them up either before your first frost or after your first frost, you're going to have to get out there and put a little work in. Get dirty. Now, you can either use your hands, which is what I did, or you can think of it like harvesting potatoes, right? When we go to harvest our potatoes, the tuber is what we actually want to eat, right? What we don't want to do is damage those tubers. Now, if you chop up 1 or 2 tubers, that's okay, because you'll have multiple actual tubers and you're not reliant on how many tubers you actually have. It's more so on the eyes up here, which we'll get to here in a moment. Now, if you're going to dig them up, regardless if you're going to use a pitchfork or not, which would be the tool of choice in this situation, just like harvesting potatoes, you're going to want to pull back your mulch, clear as much soil as possible to expose the furthest tuber that grew out from the initial mother tuber. Once you clear off all your soil, it's as simple as getting leverage underneath those dahlia tubers and gently pull them up. Now, if you planted them in the proper soil, which is well drained and very light type soil, it should be fairly easy to pull them out the ground. Keep in mind that these tubers will send out these roots right here, as you see on the screen, and these roots will root into the ground. So when you feel that friction, that's what it is. It's the roots off the actual tubers. Now, once you've unearthed them out the ground, hopefully you labeled them, right? So you knew which cultivar is which. And there's different ways of doing that, of course. One of the easiest ways that I've seen is taking a magic marker and then writing right on the tuber, just like that. That'll work. Now, another way that you can do it is simply just tag them like anything else. Keep them separate and make sure whatever container you're putting them in, they're properly labeled for the cultivars. The next step you're going to want to do is rinse them. You don't need any high pressure, high speed water here. You just want a simple shower setting on the tubers, and you're going to want to remove as much as that soil that's still stuck up into the little corners of the tubers. You'll find that the soil likes to hide out in these little crevices on the plant. So make sure you rinse them off really well. And then you're going to sit up to the side and you're going to wait. You're going to wait for that water to dry off and allow them to cure a little bit, kind of like potatoes. Now you can leave them outside, but if your temps are dropping below 45 degrees, which I imagine they are because you're pulling them up, then be careful about leaving them outside because, again, like I said, we get the freezing temperatures, these tubers will die. Now, moving forward, all I did, for an example, is how I let mine dry out, is I put them in these pans, these buckets full of perlite, just like this. And they dried off with no issues. So I let them sit in there for about 5 days, let them come to a nice dried state where it was easy for me to work with. Now, since we've dug up our dahlias, we've rinsed them off, and we allowed them time to dry, now here's the fun part, the splitting of the tuber. And I know this seems pretty daunting, but just stick with me. We're gonna make this as easy as I can because keep in mind, I'm still a beginner myself. So let's get to the tools that we're gonna need for this project. You're going to want a sharp knife, clean set of pruners, a marker of some sort so you can properly label your box or bags, which is a perfect segue into what you will be storing them in. And you can use either a box or bags, whether it's grocery bags or Ziploc bags. I've seen people do them all kinds of ways. I personally prefer the Ziploc bags because that's how I learned and that's how I've had success. One last thing that you'll need is vermiculite, some type of medium to actually put them in. But if you go to the Dahlias Association website, you'll find that they make different recommendations as well. You can use peat moss. I don't believe you'll find perlite, but I've seen and heard of people having success with that. I'm gonna stick with the vermiculite because that's what I learned on and it's tried and true. I use alcohol to sterilize all of my tools, and then we'll need some cinnamon for its antimicrobial effects that it will have to make sure that our dahlias make it through storage. So these are all of my yellow and orange creamsicle looking dahlias over here that I've already gone and I've separated, right? And then over here, we have all those deep, dark red, purple dahlias that you guys saw that a lot of people loved throughout the season. And no worries, the people who asked for them when I offered them, you will still be getting your tubers here soon when we get done. Let's talk about the plant itself for a moment, okay? So this was the initial stem of this plant that we worked with this season. I pulled this dahlia up and this is what I'm left with. Now, sometimes you will be able to identify which one was the mother tuber. And I'm gonna guess that this is the mother tuber because usually the plant, the mother tuber of the plant, it's falling apart. All the energy has been spent. And this one doesn't look like it's in the best of shape. So I'm imagining that this one, she looks pretty old. She looks old and she looks old. Really, pretty much all of these look old except this one, and this one looks like a little new one coming off. Now, you identify the old one because you're not going to want to replant that. She's not going to produce a healthy plant. So we'll discard that once we get into the actual, removal process. Okay, here's a really good example. This one's prominent. Now, you will read, if you go look up, some people prefer to split their tubers in the spring after they planted them in the ground or after they've started them because it makes the eyes that much easier to see. But really, like right here, we can see this eye clear as day. Sometimes they don't look like much. You can almost guarantee that there's a healthy eye on almost every tuber. You just must be careful when going at it. So I'm just gonna come in here. I'm gonna make a cut, right? Because the new plant will germinate from this piece of the stem. So we have the tuber body here, we have the neck of the tuber, and then this is considered still part of this stem. So we just want to take this in a way that we will be able to salvage that eye right there. So I'm gonna come in here and I am going to carefully almost lost a finger. Carefully cut this one off, and then voila, we have a tuber. And this size, you might be thinking, oh, that's tiny. She will put off a flower, no worries. You're gonna want the tuber to be about the size of your finger, at least the size of a AAA battery, but this is a healthy size that will develop a healthy plant. So then I will take that exposed end, and then we're just gonna dip it in here. And then I'll set it off to the side. It's that easy. So this is why you really don't want to allow your tubers to have more than one neck. And I knew this going into it, but I forgot. And I kind of just let them do their thing because I was so mesmerized by how they looked. Now, the easiest way to do this when you have more than one neck and they're all clogged together, they're fused together, guys, fused. So you see I can wiggle, I can pull, they usually have nested inside of each other. But one tactic that I like to use with this is I find out where they separate. Now you have to be gentle, you have to really examine the plant. And I still got a lot of soil in here as well, so I'm definitely gonna have to take this back and rinse it back off. I'm gonna use this moment to separate these as much as I possibly can. So I see a separation here, and I believe this tuber belongs to that bunch over there. And then this one belongs to this over here. And I lost the tuber, no worries. So this is what I'm gonna do. We're gonna get you out of there, and I'm gonna just gently, you can also use a knife to do this, gently kind of just get you to break off. Nice and easy. Just like this. Boom. Look at that. Boom. So we got one batch completely separated from the bundle. Now this is the new stem, and look at that, there's a real big healthy eye. You see that? That's a healthy eye right there. She's already showing. Now, so separating the dahlias themselves are relatively easy, as I just showed you. I'll throw another example of on the screen that you can check out, but once you get done identifying, labeling, and marking off all of your viable tubers, then this is the last step. You're gonna wanna put it in a bag of vermiculite where the tuber is completely covered by that vermiculite, or use a box. Use a box, maybe put a layer of newspaper down on the box, fill that box up a quarter of the way, lay your dahlias in there, cover it up with vermiculite. And you can continue to do layers upon layers. Just make sure that the dahlias are not touching, because if the dahlias are touching and one goes bad, it will make the neighbor go bad as well. So keep that in mind, okay? I hope this helps you all out. I hope you learned something here today, and I appreciate you watching another episode of Turf Therapy, where we're healing lawns and souls. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time for your weekly dose of therapy with Rob.